Welcome to the webinar training series for the Equals 2009-2011 Mathematics curriculum. In this webinar, participants will be provided with information regarding lesson components for the Equals Math curriculum. If you have any questions regarding Equals Math, you can contact the curriculum team by email at curriculum@ablenetinc.com. Please feel free to contact us for additional support or follow-up questions. Remember that implementing the Equals Math curriculum takes time. One of the most important steps to being successful is to know what materials you have, how to organize them, and how to use them during implementation. Let's get started. When teaching Equals Math lessons, we must commit to teaching math thoughtfully. Once a starting point is identified, whether it's the very first lesson in Chapter 1 or a lesson in one of the later chapters, commit to the progression of learning within each lesson, as well as moving forward in the order that the lessons are introduced. Teachers should not skip over sections of lessons, pick or choose what they would like to teach. Students are introduced to materials, manipulatives, and vocabulary in a specific and organized way, which supports students developing strong problem-solving skills. Every student has the potential to learn math. The goal is not mastery, but rather learning concepts over time, building on math knowledge. When a lesson specifies a skill that needs repetition, such as counting, naming a shape, additional practice can be provided in a learning station outside of math class or in a game sent home for homework. Do remember the skills are repeated as students use them in subsequent lessons. It is not recommended to stay on a lesson to mastery, as this does not improve learning. You can, however, periodically go back to repeat a lesson if missed skills are essential to a new lesson. Review the prior lesson, then jump back to where you left off and continue moving forward. Another important component to the lessons are the math connections and relationships within numbers. It is important for students to develop an understanding that the numbers a student sees on a clock are the same numbers that they're seeing when they measure with a ruler or when they count. These connections strengthen how students use math outside of the classroom. Building the relationship between math content areas is critical to understanding math concepts and developing problem-solving skills. Finally, all students should be seen as active learners in math when given that opportunity to do so. It is important to give intent to language and actions. This will include intentional and unintentional attempts for communication. All students need to touch, hold, and move the manipulatives that are out in front of them. They need time to explore the items and try the strategies, as well as collaborate with the group while problem solving. Knowing some students will need to practice interacting appropriately with these materials and how to work in a small group setting is a realistic expectation in the beginning. This will take time, and expectations need to be established early and practiced before being expected to sit for an entire lesson activity. For some students, teachers may need to introduce materials multiple times, and the action dictionary strategies can be used for consistency with these student actions. Providing opportunities through hands-on contact and visual support may be the most important part of teaching all students Equals lessons. Within every lesson, you will find the 5 math process areas embedded into the activities. There's opportunities to develop a student's communication, connections, representations, problem solving, and reasoning and proof. For communication, language precedes thinking, and we begin to learn language with naming things. This is why it is important for students to know the name of the math tools they are working with, as well as the vocabulary. Eventually, students are combining these names to think more deeply about the strategies and concepts they are learning. This is one of the reasons why it is important for students to have a way to communicate about math. Within lessons, there are multiple opportunities for students to practice, as well as for teachers to model how an experienced math learner communicates about their math understanding. For connections, in the structure of a lesson, students are activating and building background knowledge for the purpose of connecting it to new knowledge within and between all content areas. This is how we learn math. Equals lessons support students in connecting their background knowledge to the math tools and strategies they are learning so they can practice and apply this learning to activities that connect back to the student's world. Extensive research has shown that teaching math utilizing a concrete, semi-concrete, and abstract representational learning sequence is a benefit to all classrooms. It is important to introduce all three representations to every student. This provides a comprehensive view of the math objective. Spending time on the CSA section of the lesson provides teachers with a view on how students are understanding the lesson objective and can also provide some insight for how to differentiate instruction as students approach problem solving. Within a lesson, the representations will be shown with the letters C, S, and A. The last two process areas, problem solving and reasoning and proof. For problem solving, this is really a culmination of communications, representations, and connections. Now, typically it is expected that a math student can pull all of this together and come up with ideas for how to solve a problem. That may happen for students with disabilities, but oftentimes it does not. And good instruction is providing a way for those students to learn what it means to solve a problem with the right amount of support that allows them to think as independently as possible. Differentiation is, of course, going to support this in happening. The differentiation included in the Equals Math curriculum includes leveled support, adaptations of student actions, demonstrations, visuals, and hands-on materials. During a lesson, we will go through each of these supports. And finally, for reasoning and proof, this really begins with identifying how a problem was solved or not solved. Showing which tools were used and how the strategy was applied is the proof of a correct solution. When a correct solution isn't reached, it is time for that discourse to determine what happened or maybe to try something else. Maybe we need to try a different math tool. In this part of the lesson, that safe classroom environment is important, so everyone knows it is okay to make a mistake and it's okay to learn from that mistake. One of the differentiational strategies that teachers will find embedded into the lessons are the leveled supports. The levels of support should be thought of as a fluid part of the lesson, utilizing any level of differentiation as it fits the student's needs. This differentiation approach supports all students learning alongside one another. When determining which level to choose for each student, read through the description within the lesson to decide which support will best suit your student's need. Activities at a level 1 support include hands-on learning. This level benefits students who might require the highest level of support. Level 2 activities offer students the opportunity to solve math problems within minimal supports within an organized framework. And level 3 activities pull back on the supports and students are completing math tasks more independently. Materials within the Equals Math curriculum will be labeled with a level 1, level 2, and level 3. When you are determining which support to utilize for each student, be sure to look through each resource and choose the appropriate level for each student. The second piece of differentiation is the Action Dictionary. The Action Dictionary is found in Appendix D of the Overview Manual. It is also available as a PDF format in the members-only content. Prior to teaching a lesson, you will want to review this resource so you are familiar with it. This electronic resource is a PDF that can be downloaded onto a tablet, desktop, or any other PDF-compatible device. The Action Dictionary provides differentiation for students during the lessons by providing suggested adaptations for actions that students are asked to perform. The Action Dictionary individualizes differentiation as students are supported based on their needs in performing the actions to be an active learner in math. As you look at the lesson pages, you will notice that there are certain words that are in a purple font. These words are considered student action words that students are asked to participate with to be that active participant within the activity. As you begin to teach the Equals Math lessons, observe how your students are participating, specifically when it comes to those purple words, and let the Action Dictionary be a springboard of ideas for you to support your students' needs. It is a good idea to practice some of the early action skills such as look, touch, move, and say with your students prior to starting lessons so they are prepared to participate in the lessons and focus on their math education. By providing your students with these supports before they come to them in the lesson, they will be better able to focus on the new learning instead of trying to learn both the adaptation as well as the new math concept. Some of the other common actions that are found in the equals curriculum are spin, place, and explore. These are common actions found within the games and equals as well as in the lessons. Every lesson is made of 4 pages. While the pacing of every lesson will depend on the individual classroom experience, one lesson will take anywhere from 4 to 14 days to complete. Again, that will vary with each group of students. The lesson begins with page 1, Getting Ready. On this page, students are activating background knowledge and are reviewing materials and resources that will be used or introduced to support the lesson objective. On the second page of the lesson, a new math vocabulary word is introduced, and teachers and students begin taking number notes or writing in math journals. On the third page, teachers will introduce the concrete, semi-concrete, and abstract representational sequence of the new lesson objective, and students have opportunities to solve a problem related to the lesson objective. The last page is the follow-up page. This offers choices for practicing and applying math skills in a variety of ways, such as a real-life experience, workstations, and games. Let's take a closer look at each page. On the first page at the top, teachers will see the lesson objective, lesson number, and the materials within the gray box that are needed for this page of activities. Keep in mind that teachers should have already gathered materials using the materials list by section found within the members-only content. Items should be placed in the Math Center to avoid prepping for lessons daily. For this example, teachers are looking at lesson Chapter 2, Section D, Lesson 6, and the equals lesson objective is students will join and separate sets and compare the result. Equals lessons always begin with the warm-up section, which includes 2 activities, Part A, vocabulary review, and Part B, fun and games. The vocabulary review includes teachers and students building a concrete connection, which is a visual representation of the vocabulary word. This review vocabulary word is connected to the new lesson objective. A concrete connection provides students with a tangible example of the vocabulary word meaning. Next, students practice and apply what they know by participating in a previously learned math game. If the curriculum or game is new to the student, teachers should introduce the game and visit the past lesson if clarification is needed. The fun and games section is a great lesson component for paraprofessionals or classroom assistants to be in charge of once they feel comfortable with this lesson format. Please note that this game will always be a review from a previous lesson, so support staff typically are able to navigate the process and reinforce the skills that should be familiar to the student. The fun and games activity is a fun way for students to reinforce skills and vocabulary while working with peers and practice social skills. A concrete connection is a hands-on representation of the vocabulary word. In this lesson, the concrete connection is representing the vocabulary words more and less. You will find the concrete connections written into the lesson twice. Once during the review vocabulary activity, and then the second time to introduce the new vocabulary word. This is a great opportunity to have your students help you construct these so they are engaged in the lesson and are helping create a tool they can use and reference during the 4 pages of a lesson. Building the concrete connections can be a great opportunity for you to incorporate ways to assess and reinforce ongoing skills that you want your students to practice and retain. This is also, of course, a great opportunity to incorporate previously learned skills as well. You could certainly ask your students to label the bags with the picture symbols for more and less. As a group, we can then check to see if we accurately showed the vocabulary words. Once completed, the concrete connections can then be added to your focal point. Continuing with the lesson, looking at the bottom of page 1 during the Explore section. The Explore section provides the teacher with a place to introduce the math tools and materials that students will be using during this lesson. During the poster activity, teachers are facilitating a conversation about where this lesson objective can be found within the environmental theme shown on the poster. During the tools and manipulative activity, Teachers have an opportunity to model how to utilize the math tools that students will be using during the lesson. This is an excellent time for teachers to sit back and observe how their students are interacting with the materials that are out on the table. For Lesson 2D6, the objective is for students to compare sets using language such as more and less, and join and separate. The items that are listed in this activity need to be out on the table and are accessible to all students. This is also a great opportunity for you to incorporate other items that would relate to the theme and the objective that may not be listed but can certainly be incorporated to support generalization. Providing students with this opportunity to explore items before attaching them to the lesson objective gives teachers that chance to see what knowledge their students have and gives students a chance to have that conversation or ask questions about the math tools as they come up. On page 2 of the lesson, students move to the Introduce and Connect activity. Students begin with Section A, the Explore poster. The group builds a second concrete connection for the vocabulary words join and separate. The backyard poster is used again. Students can begin to point to examples of sets and how they can be joined and separated. Students and teachers now move on to Section B, Show and Tell. Teachers ask students a formative question to evaluate how they are using the vocabulary and what they know about the lesson objective. Teachers ask the question, what do you know about joining sets? There are some students who may not be able to answer that question without support. Remember to utilize the math focal point and past concrete connections to support students. At the bottom of page 2, you'll notice that there is a gray section called Sensing Math. Sensing Math is highlighted in gray because it is considered to be a flexible activity. Sensing Math can be done at any time during the lesson, and this is a section that can be assigned to a paraprofessional who is comfortable with the lesson structure. Is for students to connect to the lesson objective through the 5 senses. After asking the question, what do you know about joining and separating? Ask the students to communicate with the group during this time and record their thinking on the number notes poster. The number notes poster is found within your content kit box within the poster set. Students are answering, what do you know about joining and separating the sets in a variety of ways. We can encourage our students to write and talk about math, and we know this will look very different for all of our students. When we say talking about what they know or communicating about what students know, we mean communicating in the broadest sense. This can be done using concrete objects, pick symbols, a step-by-step communicator, choices in a pocket chart, as well as past or present vocabulary cards. So for example, if a student eye gazes to a rock out on the table, you can reinforce that action by saying, yes, we joined rocks, and then you can tape that rock right to the poster as you count them. Some students may choose pick symbols that you have out on the table, or maybe they have a connection with the numeral cards that you have out on the table, and you can show them how you can join numerals. A student may say, I joined sets with a communication device, or a student may activate the step-by-step to say more. All of these are ways to talk about math, and you are showing the many ways that we can write about math. Here is an example of what your focal point may look like at this point in the lesson. During the Explore discussion with students, teachers could start adding to the focal point by adding contributions to the number notes poster, as well as reinforcing those contributions by writing words and phrases, or even adding pictures as well as concrete representations to the number notes poster, so students can refer back to that information as the lesson moves forward. It is important to remember that oftentimes it is challenging for many students to recall information or even discussions from day to day. By recording what they say or having a visual aid to support discussions present in the math focal point, teachers are able to point out discussions that they have had using examples right from the students themselves. It reminds students that their contributions are important and valid, and when they say something, the teacher is listening to them. The third page of the lesson begins with a math representation of the objective. This is known as our CSA, or our concrete, semi-concrete, and abstract representational sequence. Teachers begin with Section A, Visible Thinking. Visible thinking gives students the opportunity to observe the teacher demonstrating a math concept using pick symbols and manipulatives, so that all students can see what thinking looks and sounds like as it relates to math. Teachers will model the CSA representations for all students. It is important that students experience each representation as they connect the objectives and the math skills. In this example, teachers begin by placing rocks or backyard objects on the table or math line and demonstrate how to join and separate these sets to make groups of more and less. When moving on to the semi-concrete representation, students and teachers will move to pick symbols and the math line representation. They will separate the groups into different sets and discuss more and less. Finally, in abstract, students and teachers are now working with the numeral cards or the abstract numerals to show how to join and separate abstract numerals and discuss more and less. Once teachers review the CSA and students have had an opportunity to explore each of the CSA representations, the next activity is Try It. This is where students can show their work by completing a skill drill worksheet shown here. Skill drill worksheets are found within the members-only content within the worksheet folder. All printable worksheets and assessment materials are differentiated. Teachers choose the level that is appropriate based on each individual need of their students. Level 1 worksheets are designed for students who typically need that highest level of support. There are often 2 questions on the page and it will be pick symbol supported. If you have students who benefit from the level 1 content, or any level for that matter, and do not complete paper to pencil worksheets in a typical way, review the worksheet and offer the students a concrete or semi-concrete alternative to solve the worksheet. Adaptations might include limiting the items presented to the student by cutting the worksheet into smaller sections, using manipulatives or pictures to answer questions in a multiple choice format, or maybe using the pocket chart to present choices. Use the skill drill worksheets as a guide to ask the questions and how to present the problem. Moving on to level 2 and level 3, you'll notice that level 2 is still pick symbol supported, and level 3 materials, the pick symbol support fades out depending on the lesson objective. Problem solving is the next section on the 3rd page. This is the activity that students have been working up to. Differentiation is built into this section of the lesson. Teachers can read each level of the problem-solving activity and decide in the most appropriate way for individual students to demonstrate their knowledge. The problem-solving section begins with Section A, Demo. This provides students with a chance to see the teacher solving the problem using visual thinking. Teachers model problems that will be similar to what the students will be solving. The goal is for the student to see what a good problem solver does and how they think and work with the materials. The next step is Section B, Solve It. Teachers present students with a problem and select the level of support for answering the question. It is important to note that the problem-solving worksheets and the problem-solving component of the lesson stay together. There are 3 levels of support for the problem-solving activity and worksheet. The purpose of the worksheet is to give students an opportunity to record their answer to the problem being solved. The Level 1 problem-solving worksheet is pictured on the left. Notice the amount of items on the page is reduced to the question and a set of answers. Levels 2 and 3 have the entire problem written on the worksheet, but Level 2 is pick symbol supported. Level 3 worksheets also have a challenge question included, which allows the students an opportunity to expand on their thinking and learning with the lesson objective. Once students have been introduced to the problem and the worksheet, teachers provide the students with problem-solving materials and give them the opportunity to show their knowledge. Keep in mind that students may not necessarily demonstrate that they have mastered the objective. The teacher should evaluate the student on their individual problem-solving attempt. For students who are most successful with Level 1 supports, teachers may observe how students are attending and using materials. Is the student able to choose a logical answer based on the problem? What is the overall takeaway from the lesson for each student? This answer will vary from student to student, and the objective paired with differentiation gives students an opportunity to show what they know. In Lesson 2D6, students are using rocks or other backyard manipulatives to demonstrate how to join and separate sets. With the Level 1 support, students are asked to join and separate rocks fastened to a math line for 2 different problems, comparing more and less. Students will be given 2 correct choices and 1 distractor or incorrect choice. For a Level 2 problem, Students are joining and separating rocks, and additional manipulatives, comparing more, less, and equal. Students will also be encouraged to show this objective through different combinations. For level 3, the question can be answered in more than one approach by using the math line or additional manipulatives to make the comparisons. Level 3 will also typically require multiple trials to demonstrate knowledge of the objective. After teachers have given students a reasonable amount of time to continue to practice problem solving with the materials, you can begin to close out the lesson. Closing the lesson is a way for the teacher to evaluate how students are progressing with their understanding of the objective and determine if a student needs more time to review or if they are ready to move on to the next objective. Again, remember that moving forward does not necessarily mean that the objective has been mastered. Teachers may be exposing and exploring math objectives with students so that they can make connections and activate background information during later lessons. Closing the lesson starts with Section A, Show Me, Show Others. This section provides students a chance to share and communicate what they have learned during the lesson. Some examples might include identifying or demonstrating knowledge of lesson vocabulary, organizing manipulatives for problem solving. Students might share worksheets or math journal entries, or they may use manipulatives or specific math tools to show what has been learned during the lesson. The next section is number notes. Students and teachers should use this activity to add final thoughts to their math journals and number notes poster that they started in the beginning of the lesson. Some classrooms might be using individual math journals to document what has been learned from lesson to lesson. This is typically seen in a middle school or a high school setting where students feel more comfortable navigating this extra step. With this being said, do not count out keeping less complicated math journals for younger students. Students can certainly use pic symbols, vocab symbols, or even drawings to show what they have been learning. The closed portion of the lesson is also a place for teachers to assess their students using a single-page chapter test, shown here on the right. Chapter tests are located within the members-only content. During the closed portion of the lesson, this may be the time to reset the math focal point for the introduction of the next lesson. This can be done at the discretion of the teacher. There are situations when it is appropriate for teachers to continue adding to the focal point if the subsequent lessons are directly related or build off of each other. Consider lessons related to collecting data, graphing, as well as constructing sets. If starting a new section or math skill that will require more support, clearing the math focal point is typically ideal. One recommendation to support consistency and prep time, the focal point headers or sections should remain intact so students can anticipate how new information can be organized and introduced. This also sets the stage for moving forward and having students as well as paraprofessionals assist with managing materials. Here's an example of the last page of every lesson, the follow-up page. This page provides choices to the teacher and students for practice and application activities. Teachers can choose activities from real-life problem solving, workstations, and vocabulary and math skill reinforcement games. Follow-up activities can also be enriched by activities happening in the classroom environment as long as they are supportive or are connected to the lesson objective being taught. If a teacher determines that the student in the group are prepared for the next lesson objective and further practice of the current objective is not necessary, page 4 activities can be skipped over and used for later enrichment activities when appropriate. Teachers do not want to make a habit of eliminating these activities from the lesson plan or skipping these activities on a weekly basis, specifically the games section, since they will be featured in subsequent lessons. However, there are exceptions when these activities are not necessary before continuing on with the next lesson. The 4th page activities provide a great springboard for extension and application of the lesson objective. The workstations on the 4th page are leveled to support students working more independently with the lesson objective and familiar materials. You may also want to bring in any relevant environmental opportunities you may have available to you. This could be something like a community trip or something in your school that relates to the lesson. Keep in mind that for the games on this page, there are printable game boards if you need extras for your students. This page is also a perfect place to bring in the Equals Technology Lesson Center. The game boards are available here in addition to the printable ones, and there are switch-accessible game boards found within the Equals Technology Lesson Center as well. I would like to point out that the Equals Technology Lesson Center is a teacher-guided tool, so you should not think of this as something the students can be set up to do on their own. Along with the lesson components and objective review opportunities, teachers have options for collecting data and assessing a student's growth and progress. The Equals Math assessment can be used for placing students at a starting point within the curriculum. The adjusted raw score is used to guide teachers in placing students based on their math knowledge. The student score also assists teachers with forming chapter subgroups. To show growth and progress over a school year, the assessment can be re-administered to reflect an updated, adjusted raw score and how many additional math skills a student has acquired. A second assessment option available are the Equals chapter tests. The chapter tests are found within the members-only content. The chapter tests are differentiated for support and are available at levels 1, 2, and 3. Each page of the chapter test will correspond with one 4-page lesson of the chapter. It is recommended that instead of printing the chapter test in its entirety, which may be somewhere between 17 to 39 pages, to rather print the pages of the chapter test that you will need for a section or series of lessons, or even lesson by lesson. Teachers need to take into considerations that students may need different levels of support as they are introduced to the lesson objective. Teachers may also have a student who typically uses level 2 resources. However, they may show growth within that lesson objective and can be presented with a level 3 chapter test. Teachers can also use a student tracker form found within the members-only content. This document is designed for teachers to have a record of the Equals lesson objectives that have been introduced to students, as well as offering a solution for progress monitoring if necessary. Last but not least, formative assessment opportunities are built into the structure of every lesson. Students are able to show and tell what they are doing. They solve problems with the manipulatives, and students are able to use their number notes and visual focal point materials to share what they have learned about the lesson objective. There are often times when the formative assessment will provide valuable information for teachers to observe what students are taking away from the lesson objective as it is introduced. Every Equals lesson is 4 pages in length, and it can take anywhere from 4 to 14 days to complete. This does include reviewing lesson components. Students are not expected to master an objective before moving on to the next lesson. Teachers should also include review opportunities within their daily lesson plan. This could be the first 5 to 10 minutes before the start of each lesson, or teachers could consider a lesson wrap-up at the end of each lesson. Consider building any review or continuous skills within the visual focal point. During the getting ready and follow-up pages, there are opportunities for review and practice, but we know students in special education do need more time than that. What we recommend is to loop back to and review lessons periodically during times that you choose. For example, during Thanksgiving week, or maybe after you have taught 5 new lessons. Keeping track of these lessons using the student tracker form can be a helpful management tool. When you are reviewing the lessons, make note of the current lesson that you are on, go back to review a lesson, then jump back to where you left off and continue moving forward. You may find that you are moving through the review lessons more quickly than the others, and that would certainly be acceptable. The idea is to always move forward with the lessons. Our math consultant tells us that what keeps students motivated in math is novelty. We cannot get stuck on a lesson. That is why we have to loop back and revisit lessons as needed. There are also skills that students need a long time to master, perhaps years for some, such as transition skills that your students need to work on daily. If that is the case, I do recommend placing your students within the Equals Math curriculum based on their math knowledge. Commit to teaching the curriculum for a set amount of time and give yourself 10 minutes at another point during your day to review and teach those transition or rote skills. Remember, you can incorporate those skills as they fit in the lessons or during the follow-up and getting ready page to reinforce that generalization piece. Through our experience in training and in teaching the curriculum, we have acquired useful expectations to use when implementing the math curriculum. The first is to make the expectations reasonable for your classroom. If students are just learning to sit and attend to a lesson, do not expect to get through 2 activities during your math time. Math may begin with modeling to your students how to attend during the first few minutes. In time, your math routine will build and those models will begin to fade, but know that in the beginning, you may need to start out small. As you can, include students in gathering materials or putting those materials away after a lesson. This can be a job within your classroom that students can rotate between. Students can also help create the expectations for math class. These expectations should be posted and modeled during these early lessons so students can see each other showing what math learning looks like. Start with a manageable amount of both time and materials. These first few lessons, set your goal to accomplish 1, maybe 2 activities each day. Remember, these materials and the lesson format is new to you and to your students, so it certainly is okay to take the time to talk about each item as you present it out on the table. Inform your students about your role as the teacher and what their role is as a student. Give students the time to get used to the new feel of the curriculum and the different parts of the lesson. Most importantly, read from the book. No one should ever feel that they have to memorize these lessons. And reading from the book is an important problem-solving skill we can pass on to our students. You can tell your students that you're reading the directions so you know how to use the materials that are out on the table. And finally, be content with the slower pace. In the beginning, implementing a new curriculum takes time. It's okay to start with this process. It develops over time and practice. Give yourself the opportunity to learn and take the time that is needed to establish a strong math instructional time during your day. As we conclude this webinar, I would like to thank you for your time today. The Equals Math curriculum provides consistency and support as students are introduced to new math skills. If you have any questions, please contact a curriculum team representative at curriculum@ablenetinc.com. We look forward to hearing from you.